Warning! The following video contains a high amount of hat-wearing gamers' opinion. It may be different to your own. This is life. Hello and welcome to the Mario and Luigi RPG A Series Talk Wrap video. If you haven't seen the actual series, then I'd highly recommend you go back and watch those videos for this one to make sense. I hope that it was worth your time to stick to those 5 long videos and that there was something of value to you. Reflecting on this series of games and videos, I'm seeing a downward trajectory across the series from Superstar Saga all the way to Paper Jam Bros. The only exception to this would be Partners in Time, as I would place Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team Bros above it. Also, I'm Australian, so I'm going to start shortening these game names at some point. I'm Hat-Wearing Gamer, and this is Mario and Luigi RPG A Series Talk Wrap-Up video. If there's one thing this series is notorious for, it's tutorials. I think this reputation is what caused something like the guidebook in Paper Jam, yet people don't seem to realize that you can't play a game, or rather, play it well, if you don't know how to play it. A good tutorial that teaches but isn't forced will work, and I don't think any time the games taught you how to play was done badly. The only time it was bad was in Paper Jam, where it wasn't done at all. You remember those times in school where the lesson was done in a really practical manner? One lesson I remember was measuring the heights of everyone in the class and the teacher using that data to teach students how to calculate an average value. That's one class I never forgot because of how it engaged myself as a student. Now remember those times in year 11 and 12 where the teacher only told you so many things and the rest was up to you, with the statement students are responsible for their own learning, and it was really boring and frustrating? That's Paper Jam's philosophy. Disclaimer, I'm not devaluing that as an educational method, but rather rejecting the idea that it should be brought to video games. Additionally, the tutorials were taught in a similar fashion across the series. In Superstar Saga, Bowser's Inside Story, Dream Team, and to a lesser extent, Paper Jam, Mario was taught first and the focus character was last. In Superstar Saga and Dream Team, that was Mario, then Luigi, while Bowser's Inside Story went from Mario to Luigi to Bowser. What exists of Paper Jam's tutorials does technically teach Mario and Luigi together and brings Paper Mario in later. The exception was Partners in Time teaching Baby Mario solo battling before even meeting the bros, something I never really quite understood. Out of the moves you learn across the series, there actually isn't a move that I would say I hate. There are some that I like more than others, but overall I don't hate any of them. They all have their moments of usefulness, but there is a commonality across most of them, and that is the fact that they are collaboratively performed by the characters. Only the single jump, hammer swing, and hand powers could be performed by a single person. All other moves took 2 or more characters and always included the focus characters in them. There are a few superficial exceptions such as the spin jump and bros ball and Partners in Time, but you soon learn how to integrate the babies into those moves. We also have moves learned by Mario and Luigi in Bowser's Inside Story, but none of those moves are original in the game, and sometimes they can even be used to infiltrate the inside of Bowser. When using these moves, the games make you use them in a very simple way by giving each playable character one of the face buttons and allowing the L and R buttons to toggle what moves the face buttons perform. In Superstar Saga, the face and shoulder buttons correlate to the position of the characters, but this made toggling through moves mildly obnoxious. Ever since, Mario was always A, Luigi was always B, any additional characters owned X and or Y, and L and R's function was changed after Superstar Saga to keep changing moves from being too complicated. This actually makes the usage really straightforward. We know to press A for a Mario action and B for a Luigi action, and the games stay that way for the rest of the series. L and R's change worked for Partners and Bowser's, but in Dream Team that was lost due to how many pages of moves there were by the end of the game. Paper Jam made all of them a tap on the touchscreen away, in addition to the L and R buttons for further convenience. As a result, the theming of L and R was lost in favour of a more straightforward system. At first I didn't know how to respond to this, but with the face buttons becoming more emphasized as being attached to a character, the theme as a whole wasn't really lost even after changing how the L and R buttons functioned. As for battling, the button lineup is actually more consistent here than in the overworld because there are no exceptions regarding A and B for Mario and Luigi, as well as X and Y for everyone else. Quick side note, I still stand by what I said in Superstar Saga that I would have preferred Luigi using the A button when he's on his own in battle, but that's just for Superstar Saga's own sake and not the series as a whole. The present consistency itself seemingly strays away a little in Dream Battles because Mario uses the circle pad for movement, but that's there to add variety since the only other way to defend in Dreams is with the A button, and it's not like you're using the B button to defend with Mario. It also allows the game to still challenge you when defending rather than just knowing when to press a single button, similar to how Bowser could defend with both X and Y, and the signals help you figure out which one to use. However, I think the defending buttons go too far in Paper Jam by introducing a third character at the same time, since that allows a third variant in enemy signals, as well as every paper version of those enemies having different versions of the signals with different meanings, which can cause mild confusion. In spite of Paper Jam's confusion and difficulty, it was still possible to avoid 100% of the attacks in all 5 games by following the signals provided by the enemies, but it did increase in confusion as the series progressed up until Paper Jam itself. In my Superstar Saga video, I said that the signals were appropriately difficult as it was neither too easy nor too hard, so I never really understood why the difficulty had to be increased as the series progressed. Battle moves kept the consistency with buttons attached to a character, but there was a different change in the moves themselves. Superstar Saga had you using moves that you learned from the field in battle. It was really cool to see myself using the Luigi dunk to attack enemies, but as the series went on, that was lost in favour of using Bros items. I said in the Paper Jam video that I thought the Koopa Shell and Fireflower were better at teaching the usage of Bros moves than the Splash Bros and Bounce Bros, and I stand by that. However, that statement does come into conflict with myself praising the usage of the high and spin jumps in battle. That doesn't really mean that the idea can't be used though. After all, I didn't say that Splash and Bounce Bros were bad, they're just not as good at introducing Bros moves as the Shell and Flower. If there were 2 overworld moves that used the Shell and Fireflower respectively, then that can translate into the simple battle moves that we know for teaching Bros moves in battle. The closest time to this happening since Superstar Saga was in Dream Team, where you use the Luiginary Ball and Tower in battle, but the respective field and battle moves weren't taught at the same time, and so it doesn't seem intentional. At the end of the day, I can't say I hate any particular battle move, with one exception that I'll address shortly, whether one or more characters were involved, so my battling experience, for the most part, wasn't strongly affected by it. It's just a shame that a bit of nuance was lost. As I alluded to a moment ago, there is a group of special moves that I do hate, and those are the trio moves from Paper Jam, and it's because they take so long to perform. In Superstar Saga, they were snappy moves that took at fastest 3 seconds and at slowest 15 seconds, but as the series progressed, the moves got longer and longer until we have the trio moves in Paper Jam, which take almost a minute to do once. While there are some moves across the series that can take that long to do, they only go on at the player's discretion, and when they do, they add more damage done in the one move. Messing up a trio kite or whirligig does not shorten it. The biggest damage that comes from this is that the supposed focus character Paper Mario is discouraged from being used. Bosses aren't too terribly different across the games. The early ones are simple while the later ones get more complex. They're all usually good at testing you on Bros or special moves learned or obtained in the area leading up to it. Most of them are well paced, with exception to Bowser's Inside Story for kind of halting progress on certain fights, Termite being one that stood out. The Giant and Papercraft battles were more or less a way to mix up the gameplay. Overall, I liked them best in Bowser's Inside Story. They got to the point faster and were incredibly tight in their control. Dream Team was still fairly tight, but didn't get to the point, and Paper Jam kind of got to the point, but didn't have tight control or movement of the Papercraft. It felt so sloppy. Each of the games presents a story of some kind. I will grant that none of them are particularly fantastic, but they're Mario games, and so they don't really need to be. When lined up against themselves, however, the first 3 were relatively unique ideas, while the last 2 sadly fell into something a little more generic on the Mario spectrum, Paper Jam more so. I don't really see Paper Bowser as a new fancy villain like the way I see Cackletta, the Shroobs, Forful, or Antasma. Those characters had their own individual ideas and executed those ideas in their own elegant way. Paper Jam doesn't contain anything special like stealing a voice or contaminating the country's residents, but that doesn't mean the others don't have flaws. While Antasma was a really cool idea for a villain, not much was done with him. After he and Bowser team up, it's just Bowser's plans with Antasma helping so that Antasma can be free. Now, while I do like the Shroobs and their creepiness, their plan is still a little generic, attempting to take over the land. Cackletta suffers from this too, with wanting to take over the Bean Bean Kingdom, but overall, I still think that the positives, such as their personalities in both parties, outweigh the negatives. But they're both thrown out of the park by Forful. Forful still has that generic takeover ambition, but his idea is creative, his execution is clever, and he's so incredibly funny, making him the quintessential character of that crazy story. When it comes to pacing, Superstar Saga and Dream Team are probably the best examples. They introduce things one step at a time and make everything seem relevant. Paper Jam and Bowser's Inside Story have very similar issues. There's a significant story beat followed by an excessively high amount of gameplay before the next beat. An example would be Bowser wanting to go to his castle and then walking out of Cavvy Cape and then walking through Plaque Beach and then walking through Dimble Wood and then walking through Bumsy Plains, and that just gets you to the area outside of the castle. Not to mention that the story up to that point prepares you for Bowser's castle. Imagine how thrown off I was when I arrived and found out that I wasn't really exploring the castle but rather an area inside Bowser, and then after being thrown out of the castle. Exploring the castle itself comes later. Partners in Time hit this interesting ground. I like the pacing of each time hole individually, but how they were paced within the story beats were a bit too widespread. Not as bad as Bowser's or Paper, but it did make the adventure feel a little short, even though it was longer than Superstar Saga. Despite Partners' pacing, it has by far the best atmosphere across the series. You can see the Shroobs everywhere. They've destroyed the villages, left minions wandering the field, and left the Toads for dead. It's incredibly dark. Dream Team does atmosphere fairly well too. Inside the dreams, there is a large expression of imagination, like it's a child's playroom where anything can happen. Outside of the dreams, it's a little basic, but naming a race and locations after things related to sleep help keep the world in check. Of course, the other three games aren't without their goes at creating an atmosphere. Superstar Saga presents the Bean Bean Kingdom as being somewhat hostile up until a certain point in the game. After that, there are a few beats to keep the adventure going, but towards the end, Bean Bean Castletown is destroyed again to help create urgency for the end game. Bowser's Inside Story has blorbed toads throughout the town, and Paper Jam breaks a hole in the roof of Peach's castle, leaving it severely damaged. Those things helped in smaller ways, but are mostly it for each game respectively. Although the focus character concept isn't something that's ever been explicitly confirmed as existing by Alpha Dream, it's still all over the games. If I was to rank how I would rate each game's usage of their focus character, I would place Paper Jam at the bottom with Dream Team coming into 4th, followed by Partners in 3rd, and between the last two, I'll get back to that. I'm going to do something weird and start from the middle. I think Partners' attempt didn't work as well as Superstar Saga's. They start with the Vim Factory and then jump right to the end as the baby's tears are destroying the Shroob leavings with nothing else in between. It seemed like it was trying to do the same thing that was done in Superstar Saga, but instead not really finishing it. On top of that, if the babies were the focus characters, a very dark atmosphere may not be best suited for it. Perhaps the childlike wonder of Dream Team. While I do love its atmosphere, it may not be the best for babies as the star of the show. Between Paper Jam and Dream Team, there are things one of them does that the other doesn't do. In Dream Team, Luigi, or Dreamy Luigi, are used in battle quite a lot, while Paper Jam actively discourages Paper Mario's usage. The only things that Paper Jam has over Dream Team are that there are these tiny moments where you play as Paper Mario on his own. They last for about 10 seconds, but they're there, and in Dream Team, you never play as Luigi by himself, so I guess that's a point in Paper Jam's direction? And there's also this part where Paper Mario rescues Mario and Luigi when he first turns up. I like that. Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story both present their focus characters well and differently to each other. Luigi grows from a scared nobody into a brave somebody, and I had such a fantastic time getting to know Bowser, his relationships with his minions, and his relationships with other people in the Mushroom Kingdom. And these things aren't just expressed in story, they're also expressed in gameplay with the moves they learn and the places they go to. Between the two of them, I think Superstar Saga was pulled off better, but there was so much more to discover about Bowser, so I actually prefer Bowser's Inside Story's handling of the focus character the most. It might seem a bit presumptuous to judge a video game by something I think is in the game despite it not ever being explicitly and publicly talked about by the developers, but it's hard for me to look past it. Every installment highlights a particular character in some way, not to mention that they're always referenced in the titles, except the Luigi one, but one of those Luigi ones was released in the year of Luigi. I love the Mario and Luigi RPG series, and I want it to succeed, and I'm secretly relieved that Mario and Luigi remained as the RPG line while Paper Mario became experimental. The question that remains is, where can the series go from here? There are a number of Mario characters that haven't been explored in this fashion, and I think they can be. Wario can be interesting in regards to his excessive greed, Peach could be worth exploring, and perhaps even Daisy. Another out there idea, whom I actually think would be the best character to explore, is Bowser Jr., even though the upcoming Bowser's Inside Story will be exploring him in a side story. So there's plenty of options out there in the realm of Mario games, but regardless of who's chosen, I believe it's important to see it pulled off well. This would be the time to do a list summarizing the ideas, mechanics, moves, implementations, and executions that I think would be a good idea, but I'm not. I don't think it's that simple. There are an infinite number of directions the games can go in to do a good job at implementing a focus character. I look forward to seeing whoever is presented in the future, and I eagerly await that day. For now, it's time to finish up and move on. So, the Mario and Luigi RPG series talk finally comes to a close after almost 2 years. It's been a fantastic ride and great to give this series some much needed light. See you in the next project. I'm Hat Wearing Gamer, and this has been Mario and Luigi RPG, a series talk. Hey everyone, thank you for watching the final video of the Mario and Luigi RPG, a series talk series of videos. Yeah, that's a words that I said. As usual, I'd like to give out my normal thanks to Missy, Dawn, Matt, and Hannah for their usual contributions to this video. I know Hannah wasn't acting in the video, but she did help out with the sound editing as she normally does, because I'm absolutely bonkers at sound editing. It would sound even worse than what it already does if I was doing that editing, that's for sure. So anyway, next up on the channel is, what the? There's nothing written here. Who wrote this? There's nothing, it's just a question mark. What? What's happening next? I don't, what?